Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mindset, Money, Success. And I'm your host, Lorraine Marshall. And I've had a couple of weeks because it's Christmas and New Year. And so I thought I would do another recording for the podcast. And this week's episode, I am going to talk about what happened in January of 2022. Because that is the year that my whole life took another turn. This is going to be the episode today. So Happy New Year, everyone, and let's get into today's podcast. So on the 6th of January of 2022, I'm sitting in the lounge and I've just made an evening meal and I've just finished this meal. I open my emails to check to see if there's any emails. And then the first thing I see is an email that says, Happy New Year, Loraine. And it's from a previous partner who left me in the house in September of 2020. And I had already attempted to try to negotiate a way out or negotiate a way forward. And he had already told me that I could not negotiate with him. And there'd been a lot of emails backwards and forwards and a lot of things happening in 2021. So to get this email now in 2022, I was a little bit shocked. So the email was quite good, actually, because he was saying, would I accommodate a viewing at the property? Now, I didn't respond straight away because I thought, no, hold it, think about it, and maybe get some help. So I did. I reached out to a coach who specializes in relationships, and she actually drafted up a response to the email that I'd received. And I sent a reasonable response from obviously this woman who drafted it. I said, in response to his email, yes, I would accommodate a viewing if he would honour his first financial proposal. The first one he made was 50% of the value of the property. Within days, I was being threatened I could be kicked out of the house. I would be left with nothing within days of his first offer. And so my response goes back to him to say, look, yeah, it's okay. I'll allow this viewing to happen, but, you're going to keep to your side of the bargain and honour your agreement because when the house is sold, I don't have the money. I won't be able to go anywhere, And I was expecting a reply. The next reply that came in, his email came in a few days later. And again, I was shocked because when I opened the email, he was now in what I call the monster mode. The monster mode was, have you been ignoring the court documents? And I was like, what? Because he now says, I am at risk of the police turning up, the Guardia Civil, turning up at the house, and I would be asked to leave. And that, while I was reading that email, I just felt sick, totally sick. And at that point, I was walking through that lounge and I was thinking, this is what he wants. He wants you to be in fear. And it came into my mind, that's what he's wanting to do. He wants you to be in fear. And it was quite late in the evening, and I just thought to myself, look, you've got to stop, think, and then just dismiss this, because there's no point in worrying about things now. At that particular point in January, I thought to myself, I would seek legal advice on the email I'd received, because in that email he said he was sending the court documents to me because he believed I was ignoring the court documents. Now, looking back on things that happened, I realised I knew from 2021, May 2021, because I was still trying to negotiate something through a mediation company that tricked me and lied to me and then went out of business. The mediation company I sacked in May of 2021. But I knew that my former partner had engaged with a new solicitor, because the local solicitor here, where I am in Cartagena, he must have sacked the local solicitor, because he was now telling the mediation company, which he'd copied me into this email, he was then telling this company that he'd engaged a law firm in Barcelona who specialises in this type of eviction. So I knew from May 2021 he'd engaged a lawyer. And so it was only April 2021 when I started to write my first book under a pen name, Loraine Kaling. And it took me nearly a year to write that book. But I stopped at the point that he left, because I tell my full story in the book. I tell the story of how we met and what we did, the whole relationship, how we ended up in Spain, and the post-separation abuse, the mediation attempt. I think it was about 6 mediation attempts up to March of 2021, without any help, really, because he didn't really want to negotiate. He didn't want to end anything in a friendly way. From the 4th of September of 2020, to be honest. So anyway, the January, he's sent me this email, and I reach out to the first solicitor that I saw, the first solicitor that gave me the advice to file a gender violence complaint, because he looked at the emails I'd been sent, he listened to a recording that was of a meeting we held, and then gave me the advice that that's what I needed to do. Even though I then asked that solicitor, can you not just write to his solicitor? And that solicitor said he couldn't. Did you not hear what he said? You can't negotiate with him. Well, I understood that I couldn't negotiate with him. I wasn't asking to negotiate with him. I was asking him to negotiate with the other solicitor. But never mind. It seems that sometimes you can't really make yourself heard properly. So in January of 2022, I get in touch with that same solicitor. And then he tells me, no, the Guardia Civil cannot just turn up at the gate and order you to leave. It has to go through the court process. So he advises me to go to the court and request the documents so that I can stop the procedure and then go to the College of Abogados and apply for free legal assistance. So that's what I did. And I remember going into the court. I got the documents and I couldn't read them because obviously everything's in Spanish. It's not given in English. So I couldn't read anything. The court official then had the papers, and in order to ensure that I understood what I was signing for, she asked the security guard, who can speak some English, to help. And the security guard came and read through and told me what I would be signing. So I did sign the document, and then I was able to take away the full court statements and everything that was contained in this, what they call a precarious eviction. And what that means is that the person who is to be evicted doesn't have any legal hold or right to remain in the property. Usually it's because people have got a contract that they've breached, or they didn't have a contract to start with. It was just a friend who let them stay in the house. It could be a relative that you've allowed to stay in the property and doesn't have a contract because it was done on a friendly basis. But we had been in a relationship. For 11 years, we'd been in a relationship. Before I moved to Spain, I lived in his property in York. And when we came to Spain, the first thing he did was tell me that this was our first home together. And I trusted him. I trusted that man. And at the end of the relationship, he did offer 50% of the value of the house. I was in an awkward position. I didn't understand how vulnerable I was because I didn't understand the abuse that had been present in the relationship. And it wasn't until after he had left in September of 2020 that the realization of being in an abusive, toxic relationship all came crashing down. And so when that happened, it took me 8 months to recover. 8 months until April of 2021 was when I finally thought things are going to move ahead and I would be able to leave. I would be able to get out of the place and find a way forward for myself. And I was determined I would write and publish my first book. So when I'd gone to the court, we stopped the eviction process. I had to go and get an appointment with the College of Solicitors in order to have a free lawyer. And I remember returning home with these documents and then having to translate the statements that his lawyer had written as evidence of what he's told his solicitor, basically. None of the financial offer was mentioned in the court document, and as far as I can remember, the only thing that was stated in the court documents was obviously the house was in his name only. Now, that is a huge thing that if anyone is in a relationship for long term and they're not married, right? The first thing that you need to do in that relationship is protect yourself to ensure that your name is going to be on that property, or that you have a legal agreement of what will happen if he dies, you die, or any one of the persons that decide to go off and live with another person and end the relationship. So you need to know at the beginning, right, what is the consequence of cheating and lying, and what is the consequence of jumping into a new relationship with someone else. Because if you haven't got that set out in a legal document, there is no law that will protect your position. Because as I found out, the laws in the UK and the laws in Spain do not protect couples in non-married situations unless there are children involved, and then there is some protection. So you, as a dependent woman in a relationship, can be left high and dry at the end of a relationship when the person you're with decides that you're not worth anything, that he's spent 11 years and doesn't have to help you, that he can pick you up and throw you out onto the streets, because that is what he told me. So, looking at the documents, and I started to translate those documents, he had told the solicitor that he'd asked me to leave, that was it. He had asked me to leave in September so that I could find a job and a place to live. And the solicitor had wrote, he then extended it until November for the same reason. And I read that and I'm like, well, that's not exactly what happened. This is nowhere near what happened. And so in the margins, I'm writing in the margins, no es verdad. It's not true. It's not the truth. And I was keep underlining things, writing, going through it, translating it and writing in the margins, it's not true. And I was shocked by how he had fabricated the statements, manipulated the lawyer. And the main reason why is basically because it was revenge and punishment, not anything to do with the just wanting his house back, because that's what everybody was telling me. He just wants his house back. He didn't just want his house back. And I can tell you why he didn't just want his house back. He wanted his house back and wanted to see me out on the streets, which is a completely different thing. In the precarious eviction laws in Spain, which I've looked at, and in a judgment, the judge is meant to ask if there has been, or if the plaintiff, the person who's wanting to evict a person, has undertaken negotiations. And I can tell you that I was the person, as a defendant, who was trying to undertake negotiations. And the plaintiff was saying to me, "You can't negotiate with me, Loraine." Until, of course, 2021. Because in 2021, there was a prospective buyers for the property. And in July of 2021, the former partner was in Spain. And I allowed these people to look around the property, and they were very interested in the property, and were wanting to make a deposit and start the purchase of the property. So before that happened, there was a meeting which lasted 3 hours where his new wife was walking around and around the pier, while I sat with a notepad and a pen over a table next to a bar right outside of the pier. And we negotiated. It was nearly 3 hours to try and get something written down. And we did get something written down. And we agreed it. And we signed it. And then the buyer was meant to pay the deposit. And they backed out. They didn't want to pay the deposit. I had typed up the handwritten, signed document and sent it by email to the former partner. And then with the day before they were due to go to the notary, I received the email where he said he had changed a few things on the document that I had typed, and that I should get back to him if I needed to talk about it or whatever. Unfortunately, he wasn't taking any calls, he wasn't responding to any emails, and I was again put in a place of fear in the middle of 2021 because he changed the terms of the agreement. We'd signed to say that the money would be paid on sale agreed, which would mean that I would be able to get that funds to be able to move out. Now, what I didn't tell the partner at that point, signing that agreement, was that I had an offer of somewhere to go. But when the buyers dropped out, I decided that I would tell him I had somewhere to go. And if he paid the money, then I would be able to leave. And he could get back to the buyers because the house would then be vacant possession. All he had to do was pay the amount of money we had agreed, and that was £40,000. Now, the original letter and offer was 50% of the value of the property, and the value of the property was 230,000. So whatever the sale was, it would have been 50%. So because of everything that had happened and being middle of 2021, and the prospect of somebody who wanted to buy the property, I just thought, right, well, 40,000, I'll be able to get out. I still had my rental property in the UK where the tenants were paying the mortgage, and there was a tiny amount coming back to me. I think about £100, I think, at that point, a month. So that was what I did. Unfortunately, him being him and unreasonable, wouldn't pay the money first, even when there was a prospective buyer. And they only dropped out because some notary had informed them that if they put the money down on the property, and then they may become responsible for evicting me if I refuse to move out. I don't know if that's the truth of what happened, because the person that told me, you've guessed it, was the former partner. And I still, to this day, have no clue if that was true or not. So this has been how things have been for me over the past few years. And even though the case was going to go to court in 2022, I still decided to try and stop things and try and negotiate. In the civil court rules, you can try to submit, if both parties agree, submit to mediation, right? And so I then drafted an email without prejudice, stated the actual law that was written on the court document to say under Article 19 of the Civil Procedures, if both parties agree, they could submit to mediation. And I sent that email to a former partner, and I didn't get any response. I kept trying, so I sent another email, and then another email, and then even a voice message. And this is January 2022. What I didn't know at the time I was sending those messages and emails, the former partner was in hospital. On the day that I'd gone to the court, that was January the 13th, to collect the documents that he had sent to me, not the court, not the police, because I understand that sometimes when there's court documents, the police turn up at the house and hand the documents to you, right? Now, that hadn't happened. I was the one who knew there was court documents, and I went to get them. And so all of these emails have gone, and a voice message and everything. And I think it must have been about the 24th of January when I get an email back. And in that email, I am shocked again, because he writes that he was rushed to hospital as a medical emergency and had undergone 6 hours of surgery. And he was still in hospital, and it was the 24th of January. And to read that email at that point really, really upset me. And just thinking about it now, it still upsets me. because I had a panic attack. I didn't understand at that point, because it was 2022 and I thought I was over everything, and I wasn't. Because reading that message really, I was, I couldn't breathe. I remember walking up and down, pacing up and down. I was trying to find somebody that I could speak with. I'm alone in the house, and I try a neighbour and she doesn't answer. And I try a sister-in-law from a long time back, and she answers. And eventually I'm able to calm down, um, and to get over the shock of reading that he had been rushed to hospital on the 14th of January, the day after I had collected those court documents. Um, to know and to feel like that just from reading an email about someone who I loved and cared for before put me in a place of shock and panic. Now, it's still quite painful actually to think of that moment. But he said he was sorry he couldn't listen to the recording that I'd sent. And that was it. And he didn't respond to the chance to submit to mediation. And it was January. It took ages to find a solicitor. It was March before the solicitor was appointed. And do you know something? This has been going on since 2020, and it's now 2025. And my last article that I wrote on my blog was when 4 months turns into 4 years. Because 2024, there's been 2 attempts, 2 dates to evict me from the house. The first one was March 2024. I was notified in December of 2023. And that one was suspended after social services intervened and sent in a vulnerability report. The next date was set in October of 2024, and the date was meant to be the 19th of December, 6 days before Christmas. And December of that time is the anniversary of my youngest daughter's death, and also my former partner's funeral was held in December of 2005. So December has never been a good month. And to receive this eviction notice with a date for an eviction in December wasn't really any help for me or any good for me. And again, the social services intervened and it was suspended on the 18th of December, the day before the eviction. And so now here I'm again. It's January 2025, and I've made plans. I am looking to start over again, to get out of this position that I'm in, because I can't function with uncertainty. I've creative, I've got podcast, I've created t-shirts, I've got my websites, blog articles, a book. I'm writing a second book. I've got YouTube channels. I'm on TikTok, LinkedIn, X. I've got social media channels, and I've got no income. And the other thing that happened in October is the criminal case that was against me by the same former partner was dismissed. The 7 criminal allegations where his Barcelona lawyer had requested maximum penalties. Maximum penalties were 17 years of prison. And my thoughts are now, that was heavy-handed scare tactics to put me in fear again. Well, I didn't run away. I'm still here, and I'm still fighting. And I'm ready to start exposing the truth. And if you go to my last blog, you can see the article. I'll leave a link in the description below this video and in the podcast show notes. The article is When 4 months turns into 4 years. And I don't want any other woman to have to go through what I've been through for 4 years, because the laws are in conflict. It's not only Spain, there's laws in other countries as well. And some lawyers do not help the situation because they just pour oil on the flickering flames of conflict. I never wanted conflict from the start. And if anybody wants to file through the emails to look at how many chances he had to end this in a civil or civilized manner, then you're welcome to look at the evidence, because there's been more than 10 attempts to end this in a civilized manner, and he wouldn't. And he was the one who decided to take criminal defamation, slander, harassment, revealing secrets, theft, and damages, and all of it that he put into the court were fabrications. And apparently, when you've been 11 years in a relationship, and he tells the solicitor, and the solicitor writes it into the court document for the criminal allegations, it wasn't a real relationship. She was just a piece of convenience. Well, I'm very sorry, but this piece of convenience is not being a convenience anymore. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and I hope you can reach out to me. I am ready to start sharing my story for a small donation into my fund campaign, because I'm looking to start a non-profit, and to do that I need to raise €2,400 in order to employ a legal company that can create the non-profit with the articles of association and then the bank account that will be attached to that. It's part of a bigger scheme for a new business venture that I will be revealing soon. I just need to get little step forward and another step forward because I have a business account. I'm not registered as a legal entity yet, but that's the next step. But to start this non-profit is part of a whole plan. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, you can, because I will explain in private. I've got my business plan, I've got a pitch deck, and I've got financial projections. And I would love to chat about my plans in private. So I hope that this reaches the people it needs to reach and I can get some support and some help with the business project that I would like to launch. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.